Hi guys, Olive here. I'm very excited to announce that I am starting a brand new series here on my channel. If you're a fellow millennial and bookworm, you may have heard of the 90s live-action children's TV show, Wishbone. It aired for 2 seasons on PBS Kids and starred a talking Jack Russell Terrier living in Texas with his human companion, Joe. In each half-hour episode, we see a situation going on in the characters' real lives, with commentary from Wishbone thrown in. We as the audience can hear his thoughts, although the humans in the show cannot. But we also get flashes of Wishbone acting out pivotal scenes from famous works of literature that in some way mirror what's going on in the lives of the real characters. I watched this show both inside the classroom and out as I was growing up, and like all of my peers, I loved it with all of my heart. It was so much fun to watch, and I was delighted when I got to high school and began studying some of these works of literature that Wishbone had introduced me to years prior. So in this new series of videos, I want to look back on the show and talk about the books that each episode featured. But I want to look at each episode itself. What's the story? Is it entertaining? But obviously, since we are here on BookTube, I'm going to talk about the choices regarding the book as well. What scenes did they choose to include in the episode? Which did they leave out? Did they do the book justice? And specifically, since this is a children's show, did their choices highlight the true moral message of the work that they took on? I'll be looking at one book and therefore one episode in each video in this new series that I am calling What's the Story, Wishbone? What's the story, Wishbone? In this first video, we'll be looking at one of the Western canon's most beloved classics, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and its affiliated Wishbone episode, First, F-U-R-S-T, Impressions. In this episode, Joe and his friends have the excitement of their school's spring formal spoiled by ridicule from a school bully. This jerk not only insults Joe's clothing, but insinuates that anyone going to this dance without a date will be labeled that dreaded word, loser. This social pressure leads us into the introduction of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And in the episode, we see the scenes from the book take place almost exclusively in party settings. And while this isn't exactly how things happen in the book, many crucial scenes do happen at balls. So I think painting this broad stroke doesn't necessarily dishonor the story of the book. Like all the Wishbone episodes, we get a hyper-concentrated version of the story thrown at us very rapidly. The sparks flying between Jane and Bingley, Caroline Bingley's venomous disapproval of the Bennets, and Darcy's insult to Elizabeth by not dancing with her. I forgot to mention, Darcy is played by Wishbone himself. The dog normally does take a leading role in these literary asides. So what kind of themes and morals are they using to stitch together these two stories? Well, certainly the crummy, I'm not good enough feeling that snooty people love to inflict on you. Caroline Bingley is an incurable snob, as is Darcy at first, looking down on the Bennets because of their material possessions, or lack thereof. And then in the real story, Joe wants to buy a pair of new shoes, still feeling the sting of the bully's comments about his attire. We're also shown how detrimental rumors can be. Caroline spreads them about Darcy and Elizabeth, before then trying to shut down Wickham's falsehoods. And within Joe's crowd, the situation gets tense when rumors start flying around about who's going to the dance with whom. And that leads us into the moral message that I think ties the best into this book. When the dance finally rolls around, Joe and his friends are still holding on to their anger about the whole rumor situation, unwilling to admit to each other that they were wrong. But just like Darcy and Lizzie, who initially fight with themselves about admitting that they were wrong about each other, they eventually overcome this and end up in a much better place. As do our Texas teens, finally enjoying the dance together as friends, just as they had originally intended to. And who was responsible for those nasty rumors in the first place? The same bully who was running his mouth at the beginning of the episode. Typical. I now want to look at what they took directly from the work versus condensed or changed to fit the story, and surprisingly enough, there were more than a couple direct lines from Austen's classic. There was Elizabeth's verbatim chitter at Darcy during their dance, instructing him on how to behave since he clearly didn't know how to do that himself. Mrs. Bennet saying that she hopes Jane dies of a broken heart to teach Bingley a lesson for abandoning her. And of course there was Darcy's, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love love you," followed by Elizabeth's brutal takedown. But I think we can learn just as much about their interpretation by looking at what they left out. For instance, they completely skipped Wickham's story being exposed. They only alluded that he had lied. We also focus exclusively on Jane and Lizzie. Although the other three sisters appear in the episode, they are not important to the scenes that we see. And I think this was notable considering how important Lydia's hot mess express is to the actual book. But I will say that even given their limited screen time, we do get a good sense of who the other three girls are. In one scene, we see Kitty and Lydia fawning over a man in uniform, and every single time we see Mary, she is sitting looking disapprovingly out at everyone in the room reading a book. For such a short episode of television, one in which the book only represents one half of the two side-by-side storylines, it's really impressive that they gave such a strong sense of the work. Lizzie feels like Lizzie. Jane and Bingley have the same heart over reason magnetic pull toward one another, and Caroline is detestable. They go way over the top with her character to ensure that the audience feels that way about her. Is it the perfect representation? No. But I think it shows how much fun the book is, which I know would not be the first assumption a young person would make about a classic like this. Now, the real life story I found a little scattered. It was quite fuzzy why the characters became so upset with one another when those rumors started circulating, but I guess things kind of are that way when you're young. Tempers explode and then you're not talking, only to later forget why you were mad in the first place. I do think the several threads they introduced worked well with the Pride and Prejudice elements, which is clearly what they intended. Especially considering that this was made for children. This is a great episode of television. I wanted to start with Pride and Prejudice because it is so well known and so beloved. I thought it would make a great introduction for what the show has to offer with this familiar storyline in the background if you've never seen it before, but also to provide you a refresher if you did watch it back in the day. Please let me know in the comment section below if you watched Wishbone back in the 90s, and if you did, tell me what your favorite episodes were. I'm still in the planning stages of what episodes I'm going to be taking on in future videos, and I am open to suggestions. I am loosely planning on making one of these videos every month. Or if you have any more general comments or questions, those can also go in the comment section below, but you can also find me on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles are linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Funding for Wishbone provided by annual financial support from PBS viewers like you.